Hey there guys, so the big event has finally happened. I now have 1 million views on YouTube, which is really incredible and which I could never have dreamed of when I first started posting poi-related videos on YouTube. From the bottom of my heart, thank you guys so much for getting me there. So as promised, here is the Q&A session for my 1 million views on YouTube. What was your original inspiration to be a tech blogger and a spinner? Also, do you have a master plan for all this wonderful madness? So originally, I did not really want to be a video blogger. I wanted to be a podcaster. And it was kind of a weird set of coincidences that I wound up posting those videos to YouTube. And of course, YouTube wound up being the platform to be on. I didn't know that at the time. I don't think anybody knew that at the time. In terms of what influenced the way that my videos looked and felt, the big one, of course, is Nick Woolsey. I think just about anybody who posts videos about poi on YouTube is standing in his shadow in one shape or form. Another one, of course, was the Vulcan tech blogs that were coming out at the time. The third really big inspiration actually was a YouTube channel that I can't even remember who it was anymore, but it was a young woman that I ran across that had done a weekly video series basically documenting her progress learning poi. And she'd stopped posting videos after about 3 months. Wouldn't it be cool if this happened, but it didn't stop? What if it went on for years? And so I elected to try and do just that. So yeah, it's really those four sources of inspiration. In terms of a master plan, God, I wish I had that much thought behind it. If there's any kind of master plan, it's just to make sure that ideas and information are as freely accessible over the internet for poi spinners as possible. Why did you start spinning? When did you start spinning? And have you made a career of it? What's your favorite part of poi, be it community or just being able to express yourself or your own input? Who influenced you the most? And will I ever get to meet you at a festival? So the reason I started spinning was actually because after coming back from my first Burning Man in 2006, I just thought it was one of the coolest things that I'd ever seen. You know, it turned out that there was a really great community of spinners that got together every week at Confluence Park in Denver. And really, it was those cats that made me fall in love with it and kind of showed me the possibilities of the tool and kept me coming back for more. To this day, the community is really the biggest thing that attracts me to the poi world. Some of the tech geeking sessions late night at Fire Drums and Wildfire are some of my favorite memories of being a part of this culture. I don't think I've ever seen a poi spinner who hasn't influenced me in some way, shape, or form. I've learned something from pretty much everybody I've ever seen. If I were to throw some names out there of people who have been bigger influences on me than others, Ronan clearly is at the top of that list, especially in my earlier years. Alien John, yeah, early on, Nick Woolsey too, Noel Yee, he's the guy who really got me into tech spinning. And at this point I'm going to shut that down because I'm going to leave out names and offend people. I know you keep a rigorous practice schedule. Have you always been that dedicated, or is your practice time something that grew as your skill level grew? Have there been times when it has been hard to pick up your poi in practice? So I've always kept the practice schedule that I currently have with poi, and the biggest reason behind that is a lucky bit of timing. Poi is now my third creative career as an adult. I reached a point at which I knew I wasn't getting any better, and I kind of abandoned those careers at that point. It may seem silly to some of you guys out there, but I had assumed that because I wasn't getting any better at these particular arts, that meant that I would never get any better at them. Early on when I was spinning poi, I read a book that was recommended to me by a friend called Mastery. It's by a guy named George Leonard. And in it, he talks about how when you reach plateaus like that, there are actually kind of opportunities to double down and really kind of polish the things you learned in your last creative burst. Eventually, with enough practice, you'll get onto the next creative burst and you'll progress even further in the art, which really blew my mind at the time. When I started poi, having just read this book, I immediately was just like, okay, this is going to be a thing that I'm going to apply these lessons to. And I've had a really diligent practice regimen the entire time that I have spun poi. Is it ever hard for me to pick up my poi in practice? Yes, of course. There's always those days when you're less inspired and you're less stoked to do it. I think this is something that our culture gets wrong a lot of the time. There's this kind of idea that if you find this thing that you are meant to do, like this bliss, this passion of yours and everything, that everything will be magically okay and work will never feel like work. You don't avoid work as an adult. As an adult, you get to a point where you can accept that even the fun things will occasionally feel like work. You know, my job right now is to spin poi, and it's to come up with ideas to put out there on the web. And, you know, sure, there are some days when I'm feeling less than inspired to pick up the tool, but it is the job that I chose. Even on those days, it's like, you know, better get to it, kid. Pick up the poi, put in a few hours, and it's absolutely guaranteed that after like 2 or 3 hours of practice, then, you know, I find something that I really love, and I'm just like, oh, awesome, thank God I picked them up today. What has been your most difficult challenge in dancing and supporting the community for so long? You have the longest running tech blog of anyone. How do you keep finding fresh things to keep it going? Answering this question. No, it's a different challenge every single day and every single thing that comes up. You know, maybe on one day it is coming up with a very diplomatic way to talk people down on one of the poi forums. You know, on another day it's a really tough editing challenge with a video I've picked up. I mean, if I were to give you a generic answer on this, it would be just, you know, being creative and adaptable enough to find ways of working through all of the different challenges that come my direction. In terms of how do I keep finding fresh things to keep putting on my tech blog, honest to God, if you keep a regular practice regimen, that part takes care of itself. The hardest part for me in you know, keeping my tech blogs regular, and this is really sad to admit, it's that I'm so bad about charging my cameras after I shoot a tech blog. The next time I go to shoot, I'll realize that I didn't leave them plugged in for the whole time, and the batteries will be running out. This is why I have like 4 different video cameras that I use. It's a silly problem to have, but that right there is my biggest problem in putting together my tech blogs. Do you have any awesome books for stretching or exercising that you'd recommend to keep the dancing body healthy and strong? What are your best tips for staying healthy with a lifestyle that involves so much movement? So, Nick, you get the least satisfying answer of absolutely everybody in this pack. I have barely begun to scratch the surface on, like, you know, proper body care for spinners and everything. I've really been blessed with a body that has taken a lot of abuse over the course of my lifetime. Good genetics, I don't know. I've seen enough people now coming down with various problems that I'm starting to look into it, but I don't have anything that I would consider to be conclusive at this point. So what I'm going to tell you, Nick, is why don't you share with me the tips that you've come across that have helped you out, and I will be more than happy to give them a shot myself and see how they work for me. What's your favorite color? Purple. Would you rather fight 100 duck-sized horses or 1 horse-sized duck? Okay, so this question came up an absurd number of times. Quite frankly, I'm just going to steal CGP Gray's answer to it because it is so good, but I'm actually going to bother to explain what it means. I would rather fight 1 horse-sized duck because of the cube squared law, and here's an explanation of that. So the cube squared law, it's kind of a funny hiccup in mathematics that dictates how the surface area and volume of 3-dimensional objects changes as they get bigger. So we're going to do this with a cube real quick because the math there is the easiest. And we're going to say, for the sake of argument, that each side of this cube is equal to 1 meter in length, yeah? So the area of one side of this cube is going to be 1 square meter. Because there are 6 sides of the cube, we know that the total surface area of the cube is going to be 6 meters squared, right? As for the volume of it, the volume is going to be side times side times side, because we've got 3 axes to worry about, so it's going to be 1 cubic meter, right? So right now it looks like the area tends to be bigger than the volume. Well, that doesn't stay the same. If, for example, we're going to make each side of it 2 meters instead of 1 meter, then we know that the area of one side of the cube now is going to be 4 square meters, times 6 to get the total surface area, and we wind up with 24 square meters. That's definitely a bigger number than 6, right? If we check on the volume, though, 2 times 2 times 2 gives us 8 cubic meters, right? Now, look at the relationship of the area and the volume between these two. The area is 4 times greater, whereas the volume is 8 times greater, right? So let's see what happens if we keep increasing the size of this thing. So at 3 meters, we wind up with one side, the area is going to be 9 square meters, and the total surface area is going to be 54 square meters, right? The total volume is going to be 3 times 3 times 3, which gives us 27 cubic meters. Again, the number goes up considerably. more for the volume than it does for the area. If we want to skip down the list a little bit, there's a really crucial point that happens when the cube has each side of length 6 meters, which is that the area and the volume come out to be exactly the same number. And after we get past that point, when say each side is going to be 7 meters, we wind up in a situation where the volume now is always going to be greater than the area. So this is a law that holds true for absolutely any three-dimensional object, including us ourselves, which is why it's so very difficult to find animals that are above a certain size. They are holding vastly more volume than their smaller compatriots. So this is why animals don't really scale up so well. Too Long did not read. The cube square law means that the bigger things get, the more awkward and slower they get. So a horse-sized duck is no match for my cunning primate brain. Do you or have you partaken in any hallucinogenic drugs? If so, did they affect your poi style at all? So to the first part, have I ever partaken? And the answer is yes. My first 2 years of Burning Man, I took mushrooms a couple times. And to those of you guys who are asking a more general question of if I've ever taken any other drugs, the answer is yes. I smoked pot semi-regularly in college. I don't like the feeling of being high. I realize that is extremely odd for people in our culture. The only drugs that I take with any regularity are I drink. I absolutely love microbrew beers. When I get sick, I'll take a Tylenol or something to bring down my fever, and I'm not even joking, that's it. One person who asked this specifically called out caffeine, and I actually don't consume caffeine. I found out as a teenager that it was causing the migraines that were a huge problem for me at the time, so I haven't had a cup of coffee now in something like 15 years. Every 1 to 2 years I'll smoke a bowl with somebody, and instantly again I'll be just like, oh no, I don't like this feeling, and it'll take 1 or 2 years for me to kind of my brain and body to forget what that felt like. And give it another try and everything. The direct answer to has drug intake affected my poi style at all? The answer is no. Aside from drinking a bit on occasion when I spin, and I try and keep that to a minimum, I've never had a controlled substance in me when I've spun. I really, really dig spinning sober, which I realize is not a popular opinion in our culture, but hey, that's how it is. Poi Retreat sent in a bunch of questions. Here they are broken up. How many hours a day do you practice poi? Depends. I shoot for 4. Sometimes it's closer to 2 or 3. In the grand scheme of things, I try to just make sure that I work on something that's challenging for me every day. I stopped thinking about it in terms of I have to get to X number of hours a while ago. Will you record a performance video with LED poi? I had no idea that there was a demand for such a thing, so sure, I can make that happen. Do you play any instrument? If not, which one would you like to play? Yeah, actually I play guitar, bass, and drums. I'm self-taught on all of them, and I can kind of bullshit my way through playing piano, which piano is the one that I would really love to actually spend some time getting good at. How many girls have you seduced thanks to poi spinning? As far as I know, none. Do you keep your money in the bank or in some hidden stash in your apartment? If it's in your apartment, where do you live? Keep it in the bank, and I live in an apartment in Adams Morgan in Washington, D.C. Are you an early bird or a night owl? Totally a night owl. I have been an insomniac almost my entire life. Whose statue is behind you in your tutorial videos? That would be James Buchanan, the 15th President of the United States. Actually, he was the president right before Abraham Lincoln. What is your favorite fruit? Raspberries. Do you have any brothers and or sisters? Yes, actually, I am the oldest of 3. I have a younger brother and a younger sister. My brother is a doctor who just started up his residency at a hospital in Fort Lauderdale, and my sister works for the Centers for Disease Control. She studies virus outbreaks. Mac, Win, or Nix? For anything personal, Mac. For anything web-based, Linux. What kind of music do you like and why? What kinds of things are you interested in besides poi? Again, one of those opinions that's a little bit unpopular in our culture, but I am a hardcore rock snob. Loud, distorted guitars, and I am so there. As for what interests I have outside of poi, God almighty, that could be a book in and of itself. Science, technology, engineering, and math. I got my degree in history, and I still love reading up on new discoveries in history. You know, I love reading up about physics. I love comic books. Good God, do I love comic books.
Does the millionth viewer get a prize or something?
If we can figure out who it is, I'd be more than happy to give them a prize, but unfortunately YouTube's analytics are not that granular. So anyways, thank you guys for the wonderful questions. It was really a treat to find out some of the stuff that you guys were interested in knowing. So here's to 1 million views, and I can't wait to see what the next million look like. Seriously, thank you all so much out there for watching, and we'll see you soon. Peace.